Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the MPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 8 of the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. And if you've just found us, I'm so thrilled. Hello, welcome to you. And as always, I'm super grateful to all of you who are my regular listeners. I always say this, but I do genuinely appreciate that you choose to spend this time with me, whether I'm with you in the car or in the kitchen while you're cooking something or sitting down and just giving me your full attention. All is good. I love that you're here. Now, if you're listening to this and you like it and haven't already, please do subscribe wherever you're listening to this. And also, if you like it a lot, then why not give me a review? And also, you can message me as always, offer me any feedback you'd like. You're welcome to ask me questions. If there's any topics you'd like me to cover, do let me know. You can do that by all the usual means. You can email me, joel@nonpersonalawareness.com. You can contact me through social media platforms. I'm at Joel Young MPA on most of them. And also, if you want to leave me a voice message, which could appear on the show at some point, if you ask me a question or want to put some feedback there, then you can go to the main hub for this podcast, which is www.anchor.fm/JoelYoungMPA. And you'll see there's a big button that says leave a message. And you click that and then just say what you want to say. And that will be received by me. So that would be fantastic. Now, today, we're talking communication. We're talking about sort of the understanding or misunderstandings which results in the connection or disconnection. It's really about how words and meanings play their part and how you can get the best from your interactions with others. So today, I've called it, What Do You Really Mean? How to really listen to someone. So have you ever felt that thing where you feel like you're really misunderstood? So you're in a conversation and it's as if you're speaking a completely different language to the other person. Maybe your words get misinterpreted, but you end up feeling like, you're not heard, you're not understood, and that sense of disconnection kind of grows. Or maybe it's the reverse, where you're talking to someone else and you just don't get what they're saying. It's kind of frustrating. They're using words and maybe your meaning for their words don't match their meaning for their words. And there's all this confusion and disconnection happens. I mean, how often have you fallen out with someone and got into a barney over a misunderstood word? I know I felt this, and I do see it a lot with the issues that clients bring to me. And certainly in the sort of awakening or personal development world, I mean, it's rife with it, really, isn't it? There's lots of lingo where we learn sort of different meanings for words. And then you go off with your honey who hasn't done all those workshops and hasn't read all those books, and you get that kind of blank face. You start talking about being conscious or using words like God. I mean, God's a really good example. I mean, most people who haven't done all this kind of thing in this, let's say, the predominantly Christian spheres, they might hear the word God and it conjures up that kind of Gandalf-esque bearded fellow and raises all their religious dogma because that's the meaning they have for God. Now, when I use the word God, I mean like the totality, the universe, the all, the everything. It's in me, it's outside. So it's the same word, but it has a very different for me than maybe it does for someone who sort of comes from a much more, say, Christian background or other religions for that matter. So what I found is it's really important to explore the meanings of words that we use and how those meanings or those words land with others. And it's also, of course, very important to explore the meanings that other people have with the words they use, because that avoids those misunderstandings, those disconnections, and the unnecessary conflicts. And it kind of promotes the connection and understanding and even peace, if you're willing to explore those meanings. So let's get into episode 8. So last week I was talking about labels, and I did mention briefly that in my view, all different words, every single word in essence is a label of itself. So it has its own meanings attached to it. Because if you look at it, everyone really has a unique translation of what's happening. So everything is energy, and we all perceive it through a unique perspective. So each label, each word points to a body of consciousness, a body of energy. And it's amazing when you think about it, because each of us process an unfathomable amount of data every moment of every day of our lives. Here's a fun fact. So the brain processes 400 billion bits of information every second, which is about 400,000 megabits. So to give you a context for that, because those numbers are really huge. So the average domestic internet runs about 12 megabits per second. And the super fast stuff, those cable internet, run at about 70 megabits per second, whereas our brain runs at 400,000 megabits per second. So that's an awful lot of information that comes in. And most of it's filtered sort of unconsciously. So we sort of undergo this sort of unquantifiable permutations, accessing our data arrays. So in other words, each word has underneath it a database of information which is almost unfathomable. So in a way, none of us simultaneously occupy the same space, time, and coordinates. And when every word is invoking that unique database of conditioned experience, so it's sort of built from our sort of subtly unique interpretations of the individual and collective constructs that we make. I mean, this whole thing kind of blows your mind. But when you think about it, every single word is invoking this super complex, unique pattern of meaning that's going on. So, I mean, next time you have a Barney with your beloved, it's worth remembering that they cannot help but see things differently to you. So, in one sense, there's a great gift. Words and labels, as I said last time, there's a great gift to them, which is by the use of words, we can have the generalized shared meanings. And for the most part, it works really, really well. But most misunderstandings sort of come from sort of blindly listening to our own translation of someone else's expression. And as I said, when over time, like I talked about the label of or the word God, and then what that conjures for me versus what it might conjure for somebody else. I mean, when I was a kid, the word God did exactly that. I mean, I had the sort of white bearded guy. I was raised. My grandfather was a vicar in a Church of England church. So that was what that database consisted of, the database data array underneath the word God. It's very different now because I have read all those books, done all those workshops, I've hung around different spiritual, more sort of modern, new agey kind of ideas. And so the database for the word God is completely different. It invokes different things within me. So with all of these sort of different meanings, those kind of things, how do we resolve it when there's a misunderstanding? Well, the simple answer is to really listen. So before we go into really listening, I want to talk about there's sort of basically 4 types of listening. Because again, let's look at it. The word listen is one of those words, right? What does he mean by listen? You might have a very different meaning to me, or someone who maybe is coming into this podcast and hasn't been around the personal growth world may think about listening in a very different way. For example, thinking about listening, the first type of listening is appreciative listening. So that's where you're listening to, say, music for the purpose of just appreciation, for the art, for the beauty, for the feeling. So appreciative listening. And some people might just think about listening in those terms. But they probably also experience comprehensive listening. So comprehensive listening, the second type, is where you listen to learn, to absorb information. So it's a different, just feel it, it's a different mode of listening when you're listening with that intent to receive and absorb information. And there's critical listening. So critical listening, again, you can probably recognize times when you've done critical listening. It's really that time when you're listening to scrutinize something, to make discernments. This is really useful, for example, if you're being pitched by some dodgy salesman and you're listening with that sort of the more kind of critical, is this bullshit or is it real? That's a valid time to use critical listening, but it's a very different mode of listening. And the fourth type is empathic listening. So this is more what we're in the realms of talking about today, empathic listening. That's when you're listening with the intention of connection. So you're listening more for the emotions and the meanings in order to sort of cement relationships and build relationships and just to generally connect. Those are the four types. So we're going to be focusing on the empathic listening. And I'm going to go through a list. It's kind of sort of how do you approach the potential misunderstandings, or when you come to a misunderstanding based on the words and the meanings, how do we take you through that? What can you do? So I'll give you the list and then we'll go into it deeper. So the first thing is listen to them. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but I will break it down. Just listen to them. Or I should say it differently. Listen to them. Listen to them. Then listen beyond your meanings or your agenda and really hear them. So it's beyond your meanings. It's about getting out of your own way. And next up is inquire to discover their meanings. So that invitation for you to actually inquire, to ask. Next up is take time to explore and communicate your meanings, because this is part of communication. So it's good to know what you mean by what you say, and also how that can be communicated to them. And finally, then look for some kind of shared map of meaning. So when you're in an interaction with someone, you'll be looking for some kind of shared map, because that is in the end the point. That's the positive intention of words and labels in general. So let's take a little bit of a deeper look at each of those. Okay, so first up is listen to them. Or another way of saying that is stop listening to you. So there's that thing where we tend these days to listen in order to react rather than listening to hear. So what you might sometimes find is that as you listen to them, you're already thinking about your response, or you're listening to your reactions inside, or your inner dialogue is happening and you're paying attention to that rather than to them. So a simple way to say this is stop talking, shut the F up. Don't interrupt them, give them space. So you're listening to them, not listening to you. There's that old nursery rhyme, isn't there? It goes, a wise old owl sat in an oak. The more he listened, the more he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Now, wasn't that a wise old word? Bird. Wise old bird. The other thing there is to really spot and then switch if you're in critical listening. We can often find that we listen to people with that kind of critical part of us going on. And make sure if you notice that, you can just take a moment, come inside, and switch to that empathic listening. So you're listening more with a sense of feeling, or certainly with the intention to connect. And the final bit on listen to them is just pay attention to them. Look at them, connect with them with more than just your ears. This is a whole body listening, like listen with your feelings, with your being, so that you're really paying attention to them. That's the first one. The next one is listen beyond your meanings or agenda and really hear them. So it's like we often come with these preconceived notions into a conversation, or we come with assumptions. So I'm encouraging you to sort of question your assumptions about what they mean, and drop your agenda. I mean, MPA, non-personal awareness, is so fundamentally about becoming agendaless. But when you have an agenda, it's like a filter, and it skews how you interpret meanings. So it could be an agenda like a classic agenda is to be right. In a conversation with someone, it's like you just want to be right. So you come with that agenda and it skews how you hear everything they say. Or to be clever. I know you've never done this, but I'm sure you know someone who has. Or someone who does this. They wants to be clever. So again, that comes back to that inner dialogue of sort of planning. As you listen to what they say, you're actually planning your next input. What can you say that will make you look good or impress them? Or if the agenda is about being right, it might be what can I say to trip them up, or what can I hear to trip them up? To pick up on the logic or the illogic of what they're saying and get one over on them, to be sort of intellectually superior. That is not going to help you understand and get clear on the meanings and what they really mean. So yeah, we no longer listen to understand, but rather to reply. Or agenda can be to, again, prove them wrong. So you may have suspicions or something and you want to prove yourself right. So you're listening with that agenda of how can I prove them wrong? And all of that just feeds and feeds and feeds that inner dialogue, makes you pay attention to you and not to them. Next up is to inquire to discover their meanings. So, it's really about just ask them. If you're not clear on their meanings, or the meanings seem fuzzy, or it's creating, or you get a sense that there's a meaning issue, then, just say, well, what does that mean to you? I'd like to understand. I know I have my meanings, but I want to understand what you mean by that. So just ask them, check in with them. I'm a big fan of clarification through asking. Sometimes we're so afraid just to say, I'm not sure I know what you mean by that, or what do you mean by that? Or even, that didn't land very well. Maybe, I could just assume that you're just being horrible. Or you could say, that twinged a bit. Can you just help me understand what you mean by what you just said? It's a whole different world that you enter into. And then the next one is to take time to explore and communicate your meanings. So many misunderstandings come from sort of different meanings. So make sure you take time to share what you mean by the words you use. So let's say you're having a conversation and you use a word and you notice they get triggered, but you didn't necessarily mean anything that would trigger them. Then that's a good time to say, well, it looks like we have different meanings for that. So here's what I mean. So in as much as you ask them for what they mean, be proactive in venturing your meanings if it feels like the words you're using aren't landing with someone, because that's part of deepening the conversation and helping you and the other person to come to that understanding, again, that connection. And then last up is look for a shared map of meaning. So what do I mean by that? Well, in a way, because we all have different maps fundamentally. So if you can get to a place where you're looking for places where your maps coincide, or get genuine clarity on the real differences, because it's not about agreeing necessarily. It's just really understanding what people mean, what they mean, what you mean by what you're saying, rather than just going with the assumed meanings. So again, whether it's the same meaning or the different meaning, sort of when you can really sort of cultivate a shared understanding, like an attitude of shared understanding of each of your meanings, now then you're communicating, then you're really communicating. So let me give you an example. So let's say Sue and Bob. So they're in an established but fairly new relationship, and they meet up after work. Enter the world with me. So Sue is sharing her day, and she's quite frazzled. And Bob listens and literally hears everything Sue says. But Sue is getting increasingly frustrated with Bob. So Sue says, "You're not hearing me." And Bob says, "I heard you perfectly well." And Sue says, "Clearly you weren't hearing me." And Bob says, "No, I did hear you. You were telling me about your day." And then Sue gives him that look. But then, Bob remembers that he listened to this very podcast. And he goes, maybe we have different meanings for that hearing me thing you said. So when you say hearing me, what does that mean to you? Now, Sue, perhaps a little surprised to be asked the question, might come up with, again, she's going to tell you, you've asked, she's going to tell you, well, if you had heard me, you would have responded instead of just sitting there silently. And Bob says, so for you, hearing me means not only hearing what you're saying, but also responding somehow. He might even say, responding how? It seems important to you, so it's important to me to understand. And then Sue goes on and explains that some kind of non-verbal response or words of understanding would help her feel heard. And in fact, a hug is probably in order on this occasion. So Bob gets it that hearing me for Sue means feeling heard. She needs to feel heard. And feeling heard for her requires a response from him, because in his world, he was listening, he heard, he wasn't making any movements. That's not his world. That's not where he's come from. It's not what he naturally does, perhaps. But now he knows. Now he can make a point of becoming more mindful that for her, feeling heard or saying, hear me, means I want to feel heard. I want to feel heard means I need a response from you. So a little dropping of assumptions and some open inquiry means that now they've got the shared meaning. They've got that sort of this where their maps can come together. So when she uses the term hearing, being heard, etc., he knows now what she means, and that can be really transformational for a relationship. So I encourage you to give it a whirl, and you might be amazed what you discover. So let's round this up and have a look at what we've just been talking about. So basically, going with your assumptions and not listening is a recipe for conflict, misunderstanding. It's war. Whereas if you are willing to entertain the possibility and just give it a go and activate your conscious listening, your empathic listening, and engage in some mutual inquiry into the meanings, that will create understanding, connection, peace, and even enthusiasm, like literally getting excited. It's that discovery mode. So if you go back to episode 2, where I talked about the different aspects of the growth journey, point 1 was having a discovery mindset. And this is the whole thing. If you want one key to this, have a discovery mindset when it comes to your conversations with people. And if you find that you're tripping over the words or the meanings of the words, then just enter that discovery mindset. Ask them, share what you're experiencing, share your meanings. And then by exploring together, magic can happen. And those 5 steps or stages or parts, if you like, the process I've laid out is listen to them, listen beyond your meanings or agenda and really hear them. Inquire to discover their meanings. Take time to explore and communicate your meanings, especially communicate it, and look for a shared map of meaning. So there we go. That's me for today. Well, almost. Of course, I say thank you. Thanks so much for listening today. As ever, I hope that this has given you something to ponder, to think about, maybe touched you in a way that will initiate some action in you to put into action some of the ideas and suggestions that I've made to make a difference to your communication. As ever, if you'd like some support with that one-on-one, I do one-to-one sessions. You can find those at joelyoungmpa.com/sessions. And actually on that, Scott, I just remembered I printed this out. I would love to read you, stay with me a little longer. I'd love to read you a testimonial that was sent by the lovely Rachel Lynette from Connecticut, I don't know, Connecticut, in the USA, who was a client of mine. So just so you know, the way that my sessions work is they're hour-long sessions, and people book a 6-session block. That's how it operates. And so she did a few blocks with me over a period of time. And then she very, very wonderfully sent me through this email, which was a sort of open testimonial to me. So I thought I'd share it with you. This is what she says. Rachel says, working with Joel in one-to-one sessions is quite honestly one of the best gifts that you can give yourself. He is absolutely committed to supporting you and lovingly guiding you along the path of your evolution. His warm, friendly nature combined with his sharp intuition and deep wisdom always makes sessions delightful. It's so refreshing and unusual to work with someone who truly has no spiritual ego and never judges you. You're too kind, Rachel. Our time spent together has been a potent mix of laughter, tears, and powerful shifts that created real change in my life. And she goes on to say, I've been working on reawakening my full power, embracing my sensual nature, becoming my own authority, as well as clearing old behavior patterns that were causing painful events to occur in my life. These were extremely stubborn, hardwired patterns. I'd spent a lot of time and money working with numerous healers on these patterns, and nothing seemed to work. I was determined to move on and heal everything that held me back. As a result of my time with Joel, I feel so much happier and lighter, whilst deeply in tune with my power and my intuition. To my great relief, those disruptive patterns have simply fallen away. A few words of advice to those of you thinking of working with Joel and those who are about to begin. Be patient with yourself and the process. Sometimes several layers have to be shed in order to gain access to deeper issues that are calling for healing. Come prepared to surrender with an open heart and mind. Joel, words are poor substitutes when it comes to expressing my profound gratitude to you for the way in which you have helped me to know myself as love. From my heart to yours, thank you, soul friend, Rachel. There you go. So, if that sounds like something you'd like to experience for yourself, go to joelyoungmpa.com/sessions. I would love to meet you and to help you and support you, whatever's going on for you. Just a reminder, on that page, there's also, if you want to just book a 10-minute chat with me, you can do that. You can schedule it right from the page there and have a chat and see if it feels like it's the right thing for you to do. All right. I think that's about it. I did mention MPA today, I think. So as ever, you can get the MPA process sheet for free at MPA November Papa Alpha 4.me/MPA sheet. So thanks so much for being here. Have a beautiful rest of your day. If you haven't already, do go ahead and subscribe, leave me a review and send me a message. Otherwise, I will see you in December next week.